We'll give everybody just another couple seconds to get started. Okay. Hi, my name is Doug Weish. I'm CEO of Sofel, a management consultancy helping retailers innovate to create compelling customer experiences in stores, online, and throughout the customer journey. We at Sofel, and on behalf of Macmillan Doolittle, are proud to sponsor the Retail AI Council on this webinar. Our two panelists today are Lorenzo Thione and Andy Laudato. Lorenzo Thione is Managing Director at Gaingels, a venture investment group based in New York City, focused on investing and supporting LGBT plus founded and led startups. Lorenzo was the technical founder of PowerSet, pioneer in the AI-powered search, which he exited to Microsoft in 2008 and integrated into the launch of Bing.com. Besides being an active investor in the LGBT and startup ecosystem, Lorenzo is a founding board member and chair emeritus of Startup, a nonprofit organization dedicated to fostering and developing entrepreneurship within the LGBT community. Since its founding in 2009, Startup has grown to a membership of over 5,000 individuals nationwide and 6 active chapters in New York, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Austin, Chicago, and Boston. Lorenzo was named one of the most influential LGBT people in tech by Business Insider. A native of Milan, Italy, Lorenzo holds an MS in computer engineering from University of Texas at Austin and has co-authored several publications in software engineering and computational linguistics. He's an active investor, advisor, and board member for over 80 startups and a named inventor on over 30 pending and issued patents in the US and worldwide. Andy Laudato is the Chief Operating Officer of The Vitamin Shop, author of the book Fostering Innovation, How to Build an Amazing IT Team, and chair of the Retail AI Council. Andy's former positions include CIO of Brookdale and SVP, CIO of Pier 1. A passionate leader with expertise in retail, healthcare, technology, supply chain, digital, e-commerce, analytics, project management, portfolio management, and Agile, Andy has built a stellar career leading by example and giving back to the retail industry. As chair of the Retail AI Council, along with Vice Chair Jenna Posner, Andy directs strategy and initiatives to fulfill the Council's mission to guide and empower retailers in navigating the disruptive landscape of AI technology, enabling them to stay ahead of the curve and unlock new opportunities for growth. Thank you, Lorenzo and Andy. I'll let you guys take it from here.
Thanks, Doug. I'm thrilled to be here with Lorenzo.
Thank you.
We're going to talk about everybody's favorite topic, artificial intelligence. So, Lorenzo, Doug did a very nice introduction, but please tell us a little bit more about your background.
Yeah, and hopefully my internet connection is stable now. It looked like I dropped off a minute ago, but obviously it always happens at the worst times. Yeah, so my life has really kind of like continued to split between my role as a founder, entrepreneur, innovator, technologist, and that of as an investor. And the two can and do go hand in hand, but really my background and my sort of education is really steeped in the AI, natural language, computational linguistics sort of world. I studied at the University of Texas. I then left and started my first company, which was bringing AI. After a brief stint as a research scientist at Xerox PARC, I started an AI company bringing natural language understanding to the world of search, and have continued to at least stay very close to the advancements and the innovations that have happened in the decades since after I sold my business in the world of AI. And in the last few years, obviously, with the acceleration and some of the technical breakthroughs that have brought these technologies to bear to an even greater extent to everybody's sort of concerns and daily lives, I've now started sort of a direct focus of my investment activities in the AI space. So I am regularly talking to dozens of companies every week, and those can span the application of AI from not just retail, but all other aspects of business and consumer sort of needs, and spend most of my time effectively evaluating and discussing sort of the potential of disruption of AI technologies in the world of business.
It's impressive, really. Congratulations. AI and ML have just been part of our discussion for years and years for retail, but what's changed that's moved it to the forefront of the conversation?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think it's important to kind of really understand what we mean when we say AI, and the kind of broad generalization of the umbrella term and how it has come to mean different things at different times. Before AI's most recent kind of explosion, Cambrian explosion, even, we were all talking about machine learning, and before that, we were talking about data mining and analytics, and so these concepts and the idea that we can build software that improves its own performance at a task based on the quality and quantity of data that is fed to it is not a new idea. And the idea of calling this broad sector of technology or software artificial intelligence really comes from the fact that as we got better at collecting, generating, curating, and cataloging data and feeding it to better and better algorithms, we started to see the performance of software at certain tasks that previously had been believed to be the sole purview of human beings to be near or better than human beings. And go back to optical character recognition in the 80s or 70s to be the very first kind of example of a task that up until that moment you'd really only imagine people being able to do, to now effectively every single letter going through the USPS, independent of which doctor wrote the address on the envelope, will actually be correctly OCR'd and directed in the right place. And this is just a simple example. So going back, what's changed? What's changed, I would say, is the data revolution. The data revolution has kind of permeated the entire industry and retailers especially, because it has demonstrated over a period of 2 decades that better data and more data can drive decisions and optimizations in business that ultimately drive business performance. As data has continued to grow in quantity, the information about data or metadata has grown as well. And the quality and performance of specific algorithms has sort of undergone a couple of really major breakthroughs that have opened completely new areas of application. So if you go back 20 years, right at the beginning of the 21st century, you kind of had the first examples of recommender systems being used as being part of what at the time was the kind of revolution from commerce to e-commerce. At the same time, you started having kind of a real sense that analytics around customers, data, insights, we're able to drive business performance and the retail sort of industry in a better direction. As we moved into even broader data collection and better machine learning techniques, you started having a revolution around advertising, both in terms of targeting, as well as in terms of measuring performance. I mean, the entirety of Google's business model is really predicated on machine learning advancements that happened in around 2002, 2004, around the optimization of the click-through model, effectively kind of driving better performance for advertising at a lower cost to advertisers. And then from there, what's changed again is a couple additional breakthroughs that have made it possible for understanding not just data and metadata, but unstructured data in the form of language. And so all of a sudden you were able to mine customer reviews for sentiment. You were able to create chatbot for customer support. You were even able to use AI to optimize supply chain and create demand forecasting, and nowadays to automate much of what is done around copy editing, copy creation, and marketing, including asset generation. So I'm sure that we will talk a lot about these different aspects, but what has changed is effectively the coming to the foreground of data and its importance, and a couple of technical breakthroughs that have really made it possible to scale out the approach of what was understandable from data into pretty much every aspect of the retail business ecosystem.
Yeah, I agree. You know, one of my favorite sayings is retail is detail. And we always used to talk about in retail that we're really, really good at gathering data and storing data, maybe not so good at using it. And I think that's fundamentally changing now, is we're using these tools and learning how to use it. And then I do think, you know, you talked about data and algorithm. I think also, you know, the low cost of data storage and also the compute power just really expanding as well, right? Moore's law still in effect. So all the convergence of all these things have really, really been helpful.
Yeah,
And
interestingly enough, the biggest shift from a computational power really hasn't come from traditional Moore's law, because that was not going to get us right where we needed to be at this point in time to do the kind of massive data crunching that we're doing. But this incredible revolution of shifting matrix operation on data from the CPU to the GPU, and that has completely changed the scaling out properties of what was possible with data.
yeah, my friends at NVIDIA are very happy about that. So let's dive into a few specifics. So speaking about retail, and you talked a little bit about this already, marketing, but how can AI help retailers better understand their customers?
Yeah, I would say there's both the side of understanding better the customer, and therefore, you know, when I say understand the customer, probably the easiest way to think about what that is the idea of creating models that approximate or predict the behavior of either groups of customers, broadly segmented around certain dimensions, or even individual customers. We're getting to the point of being able to model each individual's customer behavior preference, and sort of use that to either make decisions around the business, for example, targeted advertising, or demand forecasting, and again, supply and inventory management, but also from the point of personalizing and improving the customer experience, right? So I would say AI can really help sort of retailers understand better their customers from two sides. One is the world of analytics and insights, right? So you're practically on this side of things, you're gathering data across multiple dimensions, across a large period of time, and you're gathering very large, effectively, data sets. And you can then use AI, machine learning, data mining techniques to provide the business with insights into the customer's behavior, the dependency from customer behavior and time, broad market and sales trends, create sort of in that sense, like increase operational efficiency, and ultimately help drive the business from a decision making. For example, what kind of products are we going to put on the shelves or in our system next year? What kind of broad marketing strategy should we employ? Because things are happening clearly in the market that determine shift in our customers' behavior. The other side of how sort of AI can help businesses understand, and therefore, again, the understanding is the prerequisite to acting on it, is the idea of expanding and improving the quality and quantity of recommendations and personalization. And so this is about creating a personalized shopping experience for individual customers that, by virtue of understanding that individual customer, can increase both the experience and the satisfaction of that customer, and ultimately the conversion rate. And this is really, I think it's one of the most exciting kind of things that are unlocked from the most recent kind of changes on the AI side, that really kind of bring us from the idea that you had to model and understand customers' cohorts or groups or populations, audiences, as we talked, to individualized models for each individual customer.
Yeah, you know, in the old days, retailers would just put an ad out and say, here's 20% off, everyone got it, right? Then we were like, well, we're wasting our energy and our money, so let's target groups and say, we're going to have an offer, but we're only going to target it to this group that makes sense. And I think what I'm hearing you say is it's flipped. And instead of starting with the offer, start with the customer and say, what does this individual want? How can we motivate this person? And it may be it's not about price, right? It's not about just giving away margin. It just may be about convenience or about timing and
or about
understanding.
pairing products in the right way, or creating a customer journey that makes sense for that particular individual. Understanding things about an individual customer's journey that basically contextualize it into, say, are they looking to start a family, or are they looking to travel, or what are these customer journey that create a completely different experience for retail in terms of which products they're most interested in, how price sensitive they might be, what are the broad kind of categorizations of the product experiences that they're looking for. And I think one more thing that is interesting to add on the impact that the AI technology can have. We talked about data mining and machine learning, and we then talked about personalizations and recommendations, which are still in the machine learning category, meaning it doesn't feel like any of this relies on true human level language understanding. Some of the large language models innovations that we're all familiar with over the course of the last 24 months, one of the things that these models are really good at is synthesis. Effectively, from a lot of different data, they are able to extract insights and synthesize those insights in the same way in which a smart analyst, intern, or expert would do by looking at that same data. And so I think that this is the other exciting piece is, as we look at the operational efficiencies of businesses, the ability to employ LLM systems or AI systems to do the work of combing through and extracting insights and providing those insights in a form that is understandable by executives and decision makers is now no longer the purview of individual human analysts, but can be the purview of automated systems, which obviously means large reduction in cost and huge amount of increase in productivity and throughput.
So thank you. You mentioned costs, right? So let's pivot to the back of the house for retail. In what ways can AI streamline supply chain, inventory management, and some of those back-end things that are very expensive?
Yeah, I mentioned some of these just kind of as we talked through, because these are kind of really broad areas that AI systems can impact. And the details with which each one of these areas are impacted by AI, those are not necessarily my expertise and forte, but it's really important to understand that all of these areas are being, have been, and will be even more impacted by new AI solutions and systems, with the objective of increasing business efficiency, increasing margins, lowering costs, and ultimately increasing profit. So one of the things that we talked about is demand forecasting, right? The idea of kind of using data to see into the future what might be sort of points of pressure for what kind of inventory and what kind of products should we stock or should we contract for, especially in the context of floating pricing around shipping. When we're talking about things being made overseas and the kind of bottlenecks that has been created around shipping from Asia to the US, and sort of managing the cost of shipping, having appropriate demand forecasting can make a huge impact. In the same vein of demand forecasting is the ability to optimize our ability to know ahead of time when certain stocks of inventory will be running low, and therefore automate reordering and so on. From a forecasting and prediction point of view, it's not just on the demand side, but also from the point of view of business performance. And so predictive analytics around what certain customers will tend to do from a conversion point of view, from an average order value point of view, from a share of cart point of view. All of these are important business metrics that you can certainly look at the actual, and you can have your own sort of traditional way of doing forecasting, but having systems that allow you to look at all the data that is available and making their best predictions around how those are going to play out in the future can completely change the way in which executives can run the business. Same with the supplier management, right? So if there are certain suppliers that you know are at high risk for changes in pricing or availability or at high demand, you know, having systems that can guide you ahead of time through this forecasting into managing those relationships the best, and maybe putting order early, and sort of not lowering the risk that you find yourself kind of caught between a rock and a hard place when you actually need a certain vendor or supplier to come through, but you've waited too long and they are under too much pressure and demand and they can't serve you. Another really exciting piece of how AI can change the cost to revenue structure is having dynamic pricing around things. And we've seen Amazon certainly do kind of the best job at this, but kind of how do we bring automation and systems in a way in which we can adopt a dynamic pricing, even in circumstances where we're doing something more retail and brick and mortar oriented operations. And if we are looking at the brick and mortar side of things, or at least the sort of physical reality of things, other places in the back of the house that AI can really help is in warehouse automation. That's a huge, like adding robotics and systems to automate as much of the process that is sort of on the back of the house. Quality control, similarly, you know, if you're actually employing humans to do quality control, like the idea of having automated autonomous systems to do a lot of that quality control can really change the cost dynamics of it. And then for those retailers that also have to deal with either shipping, last mile shipping, or intra sort of warehouse or intra company shipping, having smart systems that can do route optimization and management of those can really drive down both staffing costs and logistics.
Yeah, as an operator, I'm seeing all these things in play. Just a quick example, at the Vitamin Shop, we have 700 stores, and we used to segment the stores by customer groupings for replenishing and assortment. And because a human can't manage 5,000 items across 700 stores, but now the computer easily can. And we have one store where there's a doctor that's recommending to all of his patients a certain supplement. So that individual store sells 4 times more of the supplement than any other store, but the computer recognizes that, understands the demand is unique for that item in that store, and keeps it, you know, with plenty of supply. Yeah. It's really fun to see it in real life. All right, Lorenzo, one more specific area I'm really interested in because I oversee it at my company is, and I think it's going to be affected dramatically by AI, is customer service. What are your thoughts on customer service and AI?
Yeah, I think, again, customer service, I think it's really broad. I think that I see this as a combination of customer experience, which can happen before the customer has an issue, and customer service as in what do we do if and when a customer does have an issue that needs to be handled sort of with the unique realities of that one individual customer. Right? So I think some of what happens before that kind of separation or boundary, I think we talked about personalization already as being one thing that increases the customer experience quite meaningfully. Things that basically instead kind of are on the other side are, of course, chatbots, right? Like we're seeing chatbots everywhere, and the idea of reducing the either the number of real people that need to be employed to manage with a certain volume of customer demands, or to empower those people to basically be that much more productive and that much more knowledgeable around the company's sort of specifics, to basically be more helpful to customers, having a variety of different issues without requiring nearly as much escalation or potentially requiring less training ahead of time. And so it basically takes some of the solutions that retail has employed, things like answer trees and question trees and knowledge bases and so on, and explodes them into something that becomes a true co-pilot for customer support. The other piece of this is how do we maximize the information that may be out there from customer voicing their experiences, the quality of their experiences. And so the ability to do large-scale natural language analysis and sentiment analysis of customers' reviews, of social media posts, tweets, that creates an additional sort of database and an additional data source that systems and retail operators can use to maximize the experience that customers have. So, for example, an example in which this would come through is being alerted very quickly to an issue with a certain product or a certain batch. All of a sudden, you may have missed something around a batch of a certain product, and a system is seeing an explosion in social media posts that refer specifically to an issue, and that issue is unique but repeated across multiple times. That can immediately surface the information that the company needs in order to react, either anything from sending out a proactive email providing people for some information on how to solve that problem, all the way to the unlikely but certainly not desirable case of a product recall and so on. Everybody, each one of you knows that in those circumstances, timing is absolutely everything. And basically, the problem and the entity of the problem is certainly a factor, but the speed with which a company can get on top of a situation and resolve it is potentially more important than the degree to which that product problem was serious or not serious. So in other words, you can have a very minor problem that creates a huge issue for a company if that company fails to address it in time and in the right way. You can have a pretty major problem that ultimately causes a minor concern or hit to the business bottom line if that company is able to put the right message and response in place at the right time. So similarly to this, AI systems can help with automated complaint resolution, with knowledge management system. There's an entire spectrum of tools that have been used in different ways to handle the customer journey and the satisfaction that now gets amplified, made better, made more productive, made just more impactful to the business by AI.
Very interesting. So just pivoting a little bit, as consumers, we all want personal data and ads and things that make sense, but there's also concerns over privacy. A lot of people are worried about AI. What ethical considerations should retailers be aware of, and especially around customer data?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, there's two sides of this. There's what laws require and what maximizes the business objectives within the happiness of the customer. I think that's a way to do it. And obviously, the two are independent, somewhat aligned, maybe depending, and a shifting target, right? You don't actually know that you're done at any point in time. You need to kind of keep an eye on how regulations and laws continue to shift, which, by the way, there are, and I have invested in some tools that help industries actually monitor and know how regulations get put out at any point in time by any regulatory body that could have an impact on the business, right? So this is how AI in legal tech can actually impact retail, is just by simply saying, I want to know if anybody in my geographic areas of concerns is putting out an RFP, RFC, I guess, request for comments on proposed regulations that might have an impact on my business. And I need to be right into it, either participating in that process or making preparations for what happens if those regulations go through and in what way. And of course, on the other side is, what do customers demand, right? What is the sentiment, the kind of zeitgeist around how sensitive people are around their personal data and their privacy? And this is also something that has shifted drastically in the last 20 years, right? As the customers have become more acquainted with the idea that there is no free product, and that when something is given to them for free, they're probably paying with their data and their personal data. They've become more attuned to data policies and what businesses can and will do with their data. So I would say, knowing what you can and what you will sort of be willing to do with your customer data, it's the first step. The second step is be transparent around what you will be willing to do with your customers' data with your customers. And I think that there's definitely a group of customers that are perfectly fine with their data being used in certain ways that kind of ultimately, for example, creates a better experience for them. Like, I'm fine with my data and purchase history being mined in order to create better targeting for advertising for myself. I don't have a problem with that. Other people may be more sensitive to it. And so again, knowing what you can by law and knowing what you will want to do with your customer data are the first two things. The third is communicate, properly be transparent about the data that you the uses of the data. And then the fourth one is make sure, and this goes into, I think the topic of today, which is the questions that you're going to ask your vendors, which is make sure that the systems that you either engineer or you bring online or you purchase are aligned with those three aspects, right? What you can do with the data, what you want to do with the data, and what you've told your customers you will do with the data. I think that if you do this, then a lot of the kind of privacy and ethical considerations around it become a result of the equation as opposed to be something that you have to solve at first. The final aspect to that, again, fits into the questions that you're going to have to ask your vendors is, what will they do with the data that ultimately you're feeding into their systems in some way, right? And so knowing what questions to ask around, is the data that you feed into a system unique to you? Does it leave your premises? If it leaves your premises, is it segregated from other customers' data? If it's not segregated and it's mixed, is all uniquely identifiable information taken out and anonymized to a degree to which you and your company councils are comfortable with? All of these are important aspects.
Yeah, I always use the example, if I have a dog, I don't want to get coupons for cat food, but I got to be willing to tell you I have a dog or that's not going to work out. So thank you for that. All right. So spent a lot of time on LinkedIn, probably too much. And I saw someone really kind of upset and saying that AI is just going to help, disproportionately help the rich get richer and the big guys that have the resources are going to grow. And then others believe just the opposite. It's going to be the great equalizer and let people be competitive, smaller companies. So do you have any thoughts on who will benefit the most from embracing AI?
I love this question. And I hope I'm not going to come across as too coy with the answer that I'm going to give you, which is take AI out of your question and then replace the internet with that question. And then ask that question in 2000, right? Was the internet going to be a great equalizer, or was the internet going to accrue value to a few? Well, the answer is both. And the answer is both for AI too. These are fundamental shifting technologies that impact every aspect of life, that have a chance, very, very meaningful chance, to increase our overall productivity and the size of the pie that we all get to share. It also is going to create opportunities for people that traditionally did not have those opportunities to seize on certain business markets, certain industries, certain business models and opportunities in a similar way to which the internet has opened up the opportunity for individuals to make money in ways that they have never been able to before. Think about media and think about content creation and think about now influencers and so on and so forth. But is it also true that a few particularly well-positioned parties were able and will be able to gather, previously unthinkable amount of resources and wealth out of this? Yes. And I think it's to some extent I don't know if I would call it a devil's pact, but it's the compromise and the trade-off that we make in capitalism, which is to say we're going to bring innovation in ways in which it certainly increases the average. It certainly broadens the opportunity for individuals across the board to grow their station and to increase their wealth and to do great work, but we're going to reward in an outsized manner the few that deliver outsized value to the rest of the world. And I think it's going to be true for AI as well.
Yeah, well said. So we get into retailers, we're going to get to our questions soon. One last question before that. What challenges would retailers face implementing AI, and how can they be overcome?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of challenges. Maybe just a few. We talked about the importance of data. there is no AI without data. And honestly, there shouldn't be any business without data either. But the idea of having relentless focus on not only your customers, but also on the data that you gather from your customers and your business, it's the most, one of the most important things. And so making sure that you have data of high quality that is available, potentially in real time. If it's not real time, that you close that loop. That's a big kind of a challenge that every business needs to kind of get their house in order before they can implement AI. Is how good is your data, and how sort of comprehensive is your data gathering. Obviously, another kind of set of challenges sort of lie around technical expertise, especially with industries that traditionally, they've not particularly being super tech centric. Now looking at what feel like very high tech solutions to problems that have not had a high tech solution in the past may seem daunting. And this is where I think solution integrator and system integrators can really help to kind of create a little bit of that intermediation between individual solution providers and the business. Obviously, cost is always a factor into all of this, and one should, and it's important to kind of factor as you look at bringing AI is what is the budget that you're willing to dedicate to the effort of choosing and implementing AI solutions. And you shouldn't assume that any of these gains come at no cost, either from a monetary perspective or from a logistical perspective, but you should rather budget for those. If you are a business that has traditionally used technology solutions, and most businesses at this point will have some level of technology built into their processes, looking at what might be the challenges of integrating new systems with legacy solutions, I think that's an important thing to kind of keep an eye on. You mentioned privacy concerns. That's an important challenge to kind of keep track of. And then maybe the other two that I would mention are making sure that the solutions you put in place can scale out with your business and plan for success, right? And you really don't want to find yourself in the position where you've created solutions that can boost your business performance, and then you're getting all this demand, and you're getting all these new customers, and your systems can support it because they can't scale with them. That's a really the failure by too much success is not where you want to end up. And then making sure that the culture of your organization can support changes that could feel fast and radical, as we see and sort of an acceleration of the pace of innovations in this sector to be quite meaningful. And you need to create a culture that embraces that change and that innovation and is not fearful.
Thank you. All right, so all our people watching, it's time to get out your notebooks. So Lorenzo, I've been asking all the questions. Now it's your turn for the title of our webinar. What are the top 5 questions retail council members should ask their vendors about AI? Yeah,
I hope there's some of what I'm going to mention that is new that we haven't quite talked about, but I'm sure that there's quite a bit that we've touched on in this conversation quite a few times, right? Not to kind of belabor the point of how important data is like I said, it's really kind of fundamental to the idea of AI systems. And so the first thing that I think you should be asking around when you're evaluating a new system or a new AI solution to either your solution provider or your system integrator is, what are the data requirements that that system has? And what are the data policies that that vendor uses around their system, right? This is about both making sure that you are ready to bring on that system, because if that system requires a certain amount of data that you've never bothered gathering, you don't have any plan or project to gather it, then that solution is not going to be useful to you. And then the other side of it is the privacy, right? Both of your own data, meaning company data, as well as your customers' data. And so you want to make sure that you get comfortable with very clear data policies. You want to make sure that if systems are being trained and they're trained on your data or your customers' data, that those systems are not intermingled with those of their other customers. And to the extent that there is industry scale data, which could be really valuable for you to see, then you want to understand how that data is gathered and what is your data's contribution to that data that other customers of theirs might see. And those customers could include your competitors in the same way in which you might be able to see data that has been gathered and commingled from companies that are your competitors. None of this is off limits. I think all of this is just about trade-offs and understanding well how a given solution thinks about data, what is the data that they require, and how are they going to treat that. The second question, which is related but not exactly the same, is really about security. Privacy is one piece, right? But you also want to make sure that implementing and bringing on a certain new system doesn't create new vulnerabilities that could compromise your business and your business data and your customers' data. And so asking directly what are the security and privacy measures and implications that come from using their system is one thing. Are they SOC 2 compliant? What are the certifications that they've gathered on that? And then what are their internal business operations around red teaming and alignment for their systems? For example, if you are using any kind of a decision aiding tool to extend credit to customers, you want to make sure that those don't have biases. And we've seen some of that coming out even in the news with the new executive order. Companies will be certain companies will be held to standard to some of that, but you really want to make sure that your provider is thinking around things like bias and alignment in ways that are compatible with your business and the risks that you see in your business. A third question that I would ask is about third-party dependencies. And so do they rely on other vendors, for example, say OpenAI or Anthropic or other big AI providers, Databricks or whatnot? And if so, if they rely on other vendors, what is the information that you need so that you can assess these same questions that you're asking them onto their vendors and understanding whether or not there are risks that come in relation to those third parties? For example, what happens if OpenAI goes dark? Do you have like redundancy, or are you training multiple models to know that if you have to take one offline, you have another one to come in? The fourth question that I would ask is, how do they measure success, and how will you measure the success of those AI implementations around KPIs that are central to your business, right? You cannot improve what you can measure. You also don't know what is going to be the return on the investment you make on these technologies unless you have a very clear sense of what are the reasons, what are the objectives, and what constitutes success. And the fifth one that I would ask is around, and I mentioned this in the challenges question that you asked me before, is what is the broad sort of cost structure of implementing an AI solution? That does not necessarily just mean how much are you going to charge me, but like how does that cost grow as we scale out the performance and the success, right? If there is a cost per customer query and all of a sudden I'm increasing the number of customer queries by a factor of X, knowing that ahead of time and being able to factor for that cost as it possibly offsets some other costs and maybe increases your bottom line performance is an important piece of how you evaluate a new solution. So cost and scalability, plan for success, right? So the idea is always model out what happens in the best case scenario and make sure that you're not sort of blindsided by new costs or risks that come out of success, and make sure that those costs scale out with your business, right? With your business revenue and performance, and not too ahead of it. Because if it does, then you obviously create cash issues, and it may still be the right thing to do, but in that case, you should typically allocate extraordinary investments out of new capital or otherwise to those solutions, rather than thinking about it as a cost.
Terrific. I took really good notes. So we're right on time. I've never done a project with you, but I think I'd love to, because I like starting and ending on time. And I think I'll turn it over. First, say thank you, Lorenzo, and turn it over to Doug to wrap us up.
All right. Well, I'd like to thank the Retail AI Council for allowing Sophel and Macmillan Doolittle to sponsor this webinar. On behalf of all the attendees, I'd like to thank Lorenzo and Andy for offering their time and their brilliant insight. And on behalf of the Retail AI Council, I'd like to thank everyone for attending. I'd also like to encourage everyone to join the Retail AI Council at retailaicouncil.com. Membership is free for all, and more information is available on the website. To everyone, and hope you have a great day and keep learning. Thank you.